She raised her glass before he could touch his. "To 15 years," she said, not even looking at him. Her phone buzzed again, screen lighting up just long enough for him to catch the name. "Aaron? Work trip?" She tilted the screen away like it was muscle memory. He didn't react, not a twitch. That was the part that made her nervous. Not angry, not desperate, just quiet. And the problem with quiet men is you never know when they've stopped listening. The waiter brought dessert, a molten chocolate thing she'd picked out for herself, and she dug in, still half smiling at whatever she was texting under the table. He watched her for a moment, not the way a man watches his wife, but the way a chess player watches a game that's already lost. No more moves to make, just waiting for the clock to run out. "So," he said, slicing through the silence with a voice, so even it was almost artificial. "What's this weekend look like?" She didn't even look up. "I'm going," she muttered between bites. "Don't start." He tilted his head, just slightly. "I wasn't starting. I was just asking who's paying for it." That got her attention. Her fork froze midair. "Don't get jealous," she snapped, putting the fork down a little too hard. "It's just a pleasure trip. For me. I need this. Right?" he said, swirling his untouched wine. "And if I said I didn't want you to go?" Now she looked him dead in the eye. "Then I'd call the cops. Say you're trying to control me. Emotional abuse. Isn't that what they call it now?" There was no heat in her words, just calculation, like she'd already rehearsed it in her head. Maybe even said it to someone else before, maybe to Aaron. He looked at her for a long time, then finally raised his glass, held it there in the space between them. "Enjoy your weekend." She blinked. That wasn't the response she expected. Not a fight, not begging, not even a scoff. Just that same calm silence that had crept into their marriage like mold behind wallpaper. She clinked glasses, almost confused, and drained hers in one gulp. The waitress brought the check. He paid. She didn't say thank you, just reapplied her lipstick and checked the time. She had a salon appointment in the morning. Nails, hair, spray tan. It was all on the calendar, his calendar, of course. Synced and color-coded like she was still pretending to be a wife and not a tenant with benefits. As they walked out, she linked her arm with his, the way she used to when they still liked each other. To any outsider, they looked like a solid couple. Matching coats, quiet laughter, 15 years, polished and intact. He even opened the car door for her. She kissed his cheek. The kiss wasn't warm. It was ceremonial. The kind of kiss you give a man before you strip him of what's left of his pride. But here's the part she didn't see, what none of them ever see. That night wasn't a fight. It wasn't a warning. It was a send-off, a courtesy. And it was already too late. You're probably wondering why men like me stay quiet for so long. Why we let it happen. Why we don't scream when the mask slips. Maybe it's because we're taught to protect first, analyze later. Maybe it's because some of us think loyalty is enough to earn it in return. Maybe it's because by the time we finally accept what we've married, we've already made peace with letting it go. I'll get to all of it. Every step. Every flick of the switch I set in motion the moment she said, "I'll call the cops." But if you've made it this far, and you're part of the 97% listening without subscribing, this is the moment to fix that. Seriously, it motivates us to keep digging deep for stories like this one. The kind that hit a nerve because you've seen parts of it in your own life. Anyway, back to her. She thought that anniversary dinner was the calm before another storm. What she didn't realize was, the storm had already passed. All that was left was the flood she never saw coming. Her heels clicked across the hallway tiles like she was auditioning for a role she already thought she had. Designer luggage, 3 pieces, all new, lined up by the door like soldiers awaiting deployment. She wore oversized sunglasses despite the cloudy morning, and a scent he didn't recognize. Something floral, sweet, and not worn for him. She wasn't dressed like a woman visiting friends. She was dressed like someone walking into a fantasy. Bright scarf, tight dress, and that peculiar glow of someone who's gotten away with something. "I'll text you if I need anything," she said, not even looking up from her phone. "But don't blow up my messages." Okay? I want to unplug a little. He smiled, nodding. Of course. Have fun. She paused by the door, tossed her hair, and threw a smirk over her shoulder. Don't wait up, and try not to sulk. He picked up the largest suitcase, rolled it outside to the cab, then helped with the second and third. The driver gave him a polite nod, and she didn't even glance back. Already on her phone again, already slipping into the life she thought she could keep separate. As she stepped into the back seat, he leaned down and kissed her forehead. A light, detached kiss. Not affection ceremony. She didn't notice the difference. She waved out the window lazily. Don't be boring while I'm gone. He watched the car pull away, one hand in his pocket, the other holding the edge of the doorframe. Only when it turned the corner, disappearing toward the airport, did he finally exhale. Then he locked the front door, turned the bolt with a slow click, and walked straight to his office. It was a drawer disguised as junk. Paper clips, old receipts, random tools. On the surface it was just clutter. Beneath the false bottom, everything. Portable SSD, printouts, folders, envelopes, a notarized letter dated 6 weeks ago. Everything in order, everything named with meticulous precision. He'd even color-coded the tabs like she used to do when she still cared about things like budgets. There was no panic in his hands, no shaking, just the steady rhythm of a man who had rehearsed this moment 100 times in his mind. He placed the SSD into a padded mailer, sealed it, and slid it into his briefcase. Then came the key, a small, vintage-looking thing, the kind people assume belongs to a desk drawer or a safe deposit box. In his case, it unlocked a filing cabinet hidden behind a false back panel in the closet. Inside, a compact printer, a pre-signed release from their estate attorney, and a line of folders marked with one-word labels: trust, power, transfer, exit. He plugged in the printer, hit 2 buttons, and pages began sliding out. Quiet, clean, mechanical. By the time she reached the airport bar, sipping something overpriced and tropical, he had already executed the first 5 steps of his plan. She thought this was a weekend getaway. He knew it was her soft launch for leaving. And what she never expected, what most of them never do, is that some men don't fight when they're betrayed. Some just prepare. He opened his laptop, logged in with a token key she never noticed clipped under the desk. One by one, he accessed each account: banking, brokerage, utilities, even her cosmetic subscriptions, and initiated changes. Not blocks, not freezes, just transfers, silent exits, redirects, permissions quietly revoked. He'd already spoken to the accountant, already had the new mailing addresses in place. The passwords she assumed they still shared? Gone. The accounts she thought she controlled? Reassigned. The house? Owned entirely by the trust. Funded by his parents' inheritance, protected by a clause she never read before signing. She wasn't just flying away from a marriage. She was flying out of a system she never even realized she didn't understand. By mid-afternoon, he was at the notary's office, handing over the documents for verification. Not a single question asked. Everything had been filed in stages, nothing sudden enough to trip a flag. By evening, he poured himself a glass of scotch, just one. Sat on the couch, not in sadness, but in clarity. The TV played something mindless. His phone buzzed once. A flight confirmation from the airline app she still hadn't logged out of on their shared account. First class, of course. He smiled at the irony. She was finally flying high. She just had no idea how far the drop would be when the cabin pressure changed. The funny thing about long marriages is how easily people stop paying attention to the fine print. 15 years together, and she never once questioned why her name wasn't on the deed. Never asked why the mortgage notices stopped coming in the mail. Never noticed the change in the bank routing numbers or the sudden quiet around tax season. Because as long as her cards worked and the lights turned on, she assumed she was secure. Entitled, even. Comfortable enough to forget that comfort is often borrowed, and rarely free. But he noticed. He always noticed. 6 months earlier, the first domino was tipped. Not after a fight. Not after a betrayal. Just a quiet Tuesday morning when he watched her linger a little too long on a text message. Not read it, linger. The faint smile, the cheek she touched absent-mindedly like she'd been complimented. And when he asked what it was, she replied with a lie that was almost too easy. Just Sarah from yoga. She hadn't spoken to Sarah in over a year. That was the moment he knew. And unlike her, he didn't scream, throw things, or go digging through her phone. He just started planning. The first thing he did was revisit their old documents. Their will, the trust, the business filings from when they briefly ran a side hustle together. Remembered how she skimmed every page, signed wherever he pointed, and never circled back. That ignorance was now an opening. Everything from the house to the vehicles to the brokerage accounts was technically under an umbrella trust his late uncle had helped him establish. She had skimmed the name at the top of the page and asked, "Why is the trustee not you?" And he'd told her truthfully, "Because it's protected that way." She'd shrugged. "Whatever. Just make sure the property taxes are on autopay." They were. But not from the joint account. Not anymore. He spent weeks creating layers. A shell company registered in Wyoming, another in Delaware, both with registered agents, both legally clean. All perfectly boring on paper. Utilities were switched to digital-only billing, with notices sent to encrypted inboxes she'd never access. Credit card accounts remained open, but all were tied to statements routed through the shell. She still swiped her card like she owned the world. She didn't realize it was borrowed from a structure she had no foothold in. Even the Wi-Fi account had been moved to an LLC. Why? She'd asked once, when she couldn't stream something and called the provider. He told her it was to get a business package discount. She rolled her eyes and went back to her wine. He created a shadow system under their marriage. Not illegal, not malicious, just invisible to her, because she chose not to see it. That morning, after she left, he executed it all with the precision of a man who had already mourned what was lost. Every shared login became defunct. Every autodraft paused. Every card flagged. Not for fraud, but for ownership confirmation. The kind of thing that requires a simple answer to a security question she never knew. What was the name of the first trust beneficiary? Answer, not her. He logged into the smart home app and removed her phone from the access list. Killed the garage remote. Changed the alarm pin. Not locked her out permanently, yet just removed convenience. Then came the final steps. He had recorded a video with a financial planner 2 weeks earlier. Not for legal reasons, for memory. A time-stamped walkthrough of every asset, every change, every move. In case she ever accused him of doing it all in a frenzy. He didn't move in anger. He moved in stages. Predictable. Documented. While she lay sunning by a pool somewhere, snapping photos in a bikini she hadn't worn in years, captioning them with fake empowerment quotes, he watched the final email confirmations come in. Title transfers. Access revokes. Notifications of compliance from his bank. She hadn't stepped in the trap yet, but it was all around her, like a stage rigged for collapse the moment she hit her next line. He took a call from his attorney. Just a check-in. Everything was going according to plan. "She hasn't called yet?" the attorney asked. "Not yet," he said, sipping his coffee. "She still thinks she's on vacation. She's going to lose her mind." He didn't respond, because this wasn't about making her lose her mind. It was about reminding her she never owned the stage she was performing on. She just got to use it, for a while. The suite smelled like vanilla candles, salt water, and lies. She was draped across the chaise lounge in a silk robe she didn't pack. He brought it, probably from some trip he said was for training but reeked of guilt. Her legs were propped over his lap, champagne flute sweating in her hand, phone buzzing occasionally with notifications she swiped away like gnats. Group chats, work emails, one from her husband, "Hope you're enjoying the weekend." That one she didn't even open. "God, it's perfect here," she sighed, stretching. "I needed this." Aaron, her work friend, the one with the gym smile and a wife who traveled too much, smirked and traced a line up her calf. "Told you, Dominican is magic. I should have done this years ago." He grinned. "You did. You just didn't book the suite back then." She laughed, just as a soft knock came at the door. Not housekeeping. It was too late for that. She untangled herself and answered, still buzzed, robe slipping just enough for effect. A hotel staffer in a maroon vest and perfectly pressed slacks stood with an apologetic smile. Good evening, ma'am. We've encountered a billing issue with your room. She blinked. Excuse me? The card on file declined the latest authorization. We'll need a new form of payment to keep the room open. She scoffed, waving him off. That's ridiculous. Run it again. It's a black card. I understand, but it's already been attempted 3 times. We'd appreciate it if you came to the front desk to clear it up. Behind her, Erin was already sitting up straighter, the mood soured. She turned back to him with a shrug. Just some glitch. I'll be right back. She slid into her heels, grabbed her purse, and strutted down to the lobby like she was about to fire someone. But at the desk, things were already unraveling. The clerk was waiting with a stack of papers. We traced the rejection, ma'am. It wasn't a glitch. The card account was closed today, but the attempt triggered a fraud alert. Wait, closed by who? By the account holder, which isn't you. That's my husband's card, she said, voice rising. He must have, he's playing games. Just switch it to mine. That's the thing, the clerk said, and now his voice lowered. A secondary authorization was added for billing before the card deactivated. Charges were rerouted. To who? The clerk handed her a single sheet of paper. Her name, the room number, the charges, and below that, in bold, alternate billing party, Helena M. B. Vice President, Corporate Travel Solutions. Helena, Erin's wife. Her blood turned cold. What the hell is this? She hissed. We've notified the cardholder. As a corporate account, the discrepancy has triggered a security protocol. Security. She turned to see 2 uniformed staff approach the desk, calmly but with purpose. Ma'am, we may need to request an alternative method of payment or ask you to vacate the room pending resolution. Erin appeared behind her, having followed the tension down like smoke to fire. He looked at the paper. His mouth opened, closed. Then he stepped back, as if the ground beneath her was contagious. What did you do? He asked her. She turned to him, furious. Me? You're the one who brought that damn robe and booked this room. With your card. It wasn't supposed to hit her account. He looked again at the clerk, then at the security guards, then back at her like she was a puzzle missing too many pieces to be worth solving. You said your husband didn't know. I didn't think he did. One of the guards asked if there was a problem. No, Erin said, backing away farther, palms up. No problem. I'm checking out. And just like that, he was gone. Elevator doors swallowed him whole. She stood in the lobby in heels and silk, clutching a sheet of paper that now felt radioactive. The clerk waited, pen in hand. Ma'am, do you have another form of payment? She opened her wallet with trembling fingers. Declined. She tried another. Declined. And just like that, the luxury weekend she mocked him over was now being itemized and sent to the wife of the man she was cheating with. She didn't cry. Not yet. She just stood there, realizing the walls hadn't just closed in. They'd been moving for days. She just hadn't noticed the sound. The first call came at 6:13 a.m. Her name flashed across the screen, Sienna Wife. With that smug vacation photo still set as her contact image. Sunglasses, white sand, drink in hand. He let it ring out. No vibration, just the screen lighting up the dark room like a lighthouse guiding nothing. The second call came 2 minutes later. Then a third, a fourth, a fifth. No voicemails, just desperate redials. By the 6th, he silenced the ringer and slid the phone across the nightstand. He didn't block her. That would have been too final, too theatrical. No, this was quieter, more surgical. Let her call. Let her try. That was the whole point. By 6:41, the hotel concierge left a message. Something about a billing situation. Your wife is requesting we contact you directly to resolve the issue regarding payment and incidentals. She insists you are responsible for the account on file. Please return the call at your earliest convenience. At 6:52, her sister tried. Call me, please. Sienna's in a panic. Something happened with the hotel, and she can't get into her bank app? What's going on? He stood by the kitchen window, sipping his coffee in silence, watching the early sunlight crawl up the neighbor's roof. No music, no news, just the drip of the coffee machine behind him and the increasingly frantic buzz of a phone he had no intention of touching. At 7:15, her best friend texted, "You need to pick up. Sienna says you're messing with her finances?" At 7:23, her mother called. He stared at the name, Linda, Sienna's mom, and let it ring twice before answering. "Hello." Her voice cracked out of the gate. "What did you do? She says you've locked her out of everything." She's hysterical. He didn't sit down, didn't pace, just stood still and let the words settle like dust on a long-forgotten shelf. "I gave her what she asked for," he said evenly. "Freedom." There was a pause, the kind of silence that's too loud. Then, "She didn't ask for this. She's stranded. She said the room's been charged to someone else's card. Someone's wife. Do you have any idea what kind of trouble she's in? I imagine she has a better idea now than she did yesterday." Linda's voice sharpened. "You're punishing her? You're humiliating her in front of everyone? She's your wife, for God's sake." "No," he said, lowering the coffee mug to the counter. "She was my wife. Now she's a guest overstaying her welcome. She said you shut down her phone account. She can't even call Uber." He nodded to himself, almost smiling. "That was the last one on my list." "You're enjoying this?" she accused. "No," he said. "I'm executing a plan I built over half a year while she was lying to my face and spending my money on hotel robes and work friends. There's a difference." A sharp inhale from the other side of the line. "You always were so calculated. I never liked that about you. And I always noticed you raised her to think consequences were negotiable. I guess we're both consistent." "She's your wife," Linda repeated, but it landed weaker this time, like she knew she was losing ground. "No," he said again, this time with finality. She made sure she wasn't. He ended the call without another word and turned his phone face down. He knew what she was doing now, crying to whoever would listen, weaponizing tears, trying to spin it as a betrayal. But the problem with playing victim is, eventually, someone asks to see the receipts. And he had every one of them. By 8:03, the attorney emailed confirmation of asset holds. By 8:19, the first article of dissolution was acknowledged. By 8:30, she was pacing barefoot in a hotel lobby, calling his name to no one who cared. The irony? She could have left with her dignity intact. She could have had a quiet conversation, a fair split, a decent goodbye. Instead, she boarded a flight wearing delusion and entitlement like armor. And now, every call she made was just another echo bouncing off the walls of a life that no longer answered to her. She landed on a red-eye, still in the same dress from the night before, makeup smudged, fury brewing just under the surface like a boiler about to blow. The moment the plane touched down, she stormed toward baggage claim, pulling out her phone to call an Uber. Nothing. No signal. No SIM card detected. The screen read. She stared at it in disbelief. She restarted it. Twice. Same result. She tried to connect to the airport Wi-Fi. Password required. The recovery number tied to her email was his. The two-factor authentication? Also his. She cursed under her breath, then pulled out her wallet and stormed toward the ATM. The bank card, her personal one, was supposed to be her fallback just in case. Inserted it. Punched in the code. Declined. Tried again. Declined. She tried to check her balance at the kiosk. Account suspended. Contact branch. The man behind her cleared his throat. She didn't turn around. Her blood was boiling, and now her face was burning too. "Just take the cash," she muttered, jabbing the cancel button. Except there was no cash, no card, and no account. Her Uber ride? Paid for by a stranger with sympathy. She promised to Venmo him as soon as this mess is over. He laughed nervously. She didn't join him. When she arrived home, still dragging her luggage like an anchor behind her, she reached for her keys, already dreading the conversation but clinging to the idea that at least here she could reclaim some ground. Click. Nothing. Click, click. Still nothing. The lock had been changed. She rang the bell. No answer. She tried again, then knocked hard enough to bruise. The house stared back at her like a stranger. She walked around to the side, checked the back door. Also locked. Tried the garage keypad. Access denied. A neighbor peeked through the blinds. She forced a smile, waved. Her hand was shaking. The next stop, her lawyer's office. She didn't make an appointment. She didn't wait in the lobby. She barged into the office like a woman who'd just had her throne stolen. "I want a copy of our marital documents," she snapped. "He's locked me out of everything. Changed accounts. The house. Even my phone. That can't be legal." The lawyer, an older man who had probably dealt with dozens of these tantrums, raised an eyebrow and clicked around his screen. "You signed a prenup," he said slowly, like she was a client from another case he barely remembered. "Yeah, but it was symbolic," she said, waving it off. "I told him that at the time. We even joked about it. I mean, he drew up all this ridiculous language about asset control and exit clauses. I was like, sure, whatever, and signed it. You were there." "I was," he said. "And unfortunately, what you considered symbolic was actually quite specific. The document has a voluntary exit clause." "What the hell is that supposed to mean?" He turned his screen around and pointed. Clause 14. In the event that one party voluntarily removes themselves from the shared residence for more than 72 consecutive hours without mutual agreement, said party will have waived all rights to claim community property distribution unless evidence of coercion or harm is provided. She blinked. "That's not real." "It is. And you signed it. Initialed it, in fact. Twice." "That's insane. He can't use that now. That's just a piece of paper. It's a notarized legal contract, and you left town without discussion. Voluntarily. In writing, no less. Text messages confirm your departure was self-initiated. We pulled them from the cloud backup." She staggered backward a half step. No, he can't take everything." "You didn't have much to begin with," the lawyer added flatly. "Most of the major assets were under his name or held in trust. The prenup essentially preserved that." She felt the edges of her vision go fuzzy. "But he let me use the cards. He put me on the titles. He made me feel like it was ours." "Emotion doesn't translate into equity," he said without an ounce of pity. "And frankly, if he'd contested the exit clause maliciously, maybe you'd have a case. But based on how quiet and thorough this all was, I'd say he's been planning it for a while. Methodically. Legally." She sat down, hard, onto the nearest chair. "I left for a weekend," she whispered. The lawyer looked at her, then slowly closed the folder. "No," he said, not unkindly. "You left the marriage. He just made it official." She hadn't slept in 36 hours. Not real sleep, just panic naps in taxicabs and the stale leather chair in her lawyer's waiting room. By the time she reached Logan's office, barely able to stand straight in her heels, her desperation had fermented into something bitter and sharp. Logan was her fallback, her college friend, her brunch buddy, her if things go to hell, I've got you kind of person. He sold her and her husband the house years ago, knew every detail, knew the history, knew them, and yet, he hadn't returned a single one of her calls. Not even a text. Nothing. She stormed past the receptionist like a woman on fire. "Is Logan in?" The assistant stood halfway, startled. "He's with a client." "I'm not asking," she snapped, pushing open the glass door to his corner office. Logan was seated behind his desk, sleeves rolled up, tie loosened. He looked up, and she saw it immediately. Guilt. He didn't smile, didn't stand, just sighed and leaned back like he'd been waiting for her storm to arrive. "You," she hissed, pointing. "You knew." Logan ran a hand over his jaw. "Yeah. You knew what he was doing, and you didn't say a goddamn thing?" He gestured for her to close the door. She didn't. "I'm your friend, Logan." He nodded slowly. "I know. Then explain to me how I come back from a weekend and can't get into my own house. My bank accounts are frozen. My cards don't work. I can't even find my name on the property title. Explain how that's even possible. He looked down at his desk, then opened a drawer and pulled out a thick manila folder. He came to me 6 months ago. She blinked. Said he wanted to prepare for a shift in the household. Told me you'd be taking a break soon. Those were his words. A break. Said he didn't want to deal with legal gray zones if things turned messy. She grabbed the folder from his hand and tore it open. Page after page of transactions, filings, timestamp transfers. Entities she didn't recognize. Real estate trusts with bland names like Elmwood Holdings and Oak Run Partners. What the hell is this? Title separation. He had the deed passed through 3 layers of trust. Took months to clean. That's why he started early. Everything was signed, filed, and finalized before you ever packed that first suitcase. She stared at the document in her hand, her house, the kitchen she designed, the garden she planted, and saw nothing but aliases, transfers, shells. You helped him, she whispered, eyes narrowing. You helped him screw me over. Logan's voice didn't rise. I followed legal instructions. It's what I do. You're my friend. I was also his broker, and he paid me a retainer you never matched. She flinched like he'd slapped her. Do you know how many late-night drinks we had? She snapped. How many hours I spent venting to you about him. You acted like you were on my side. I was on the side of whoever had a plan, he said calmly. And he was the only one who did. She staggered back a step, mouth opening, then closing. You knew, she repeated. This whole time. He didn't ask me to sabotage you, Logan said quietly. He just asked me to be ready, because he said, and I quote, she's going to leave in her head before she ever packs her bags. And I need to make sure when she finally does. There's nothing left for her to come back to. The folder slipped from her fingers and hit the floor. He planned this, she said, stunned. Yes, Logan said, rising from his chair. And he planned it well. She looked around his office like it was a crime scene, only now realizing she wasn't the first on the battlefield. She was the last to know, the last to understand that the war wasn't beginning. It was already over. The road to his brother's cabin was long, narrow, and silent, just like her thoughts. No radio, no music, just the rhythmic thud of the tires over uneven asphalt and the faint, humiliating echo of her own breath catching every time she replayed the past 72 hours. The canceled cards, the locked house, the look on Logan's face when he said, he planned it well. Every mile she drove, the denial peeled away, and underneath it was something colder. The realization that she wasn't chasing a man. She was chasing control, and she'd already lost it. By the time she reached the woods, night was starting to fall. The cabin sat on a small rise by the lake. Rustic, quiet, unassuming. Smoke rose faintly from the chimney, the only sign of life in the stillness. She parked crookedly, the gravel crunching loud in the silence. Her hands trembled as she gripped the steering wheel. She told herself she wasn't crying, but the mirror said otherwise. His brother, Caleb, opened the door before she even knocked. He'd always been the more approachable one. Big shoulders, warm grin, no judgment. Except now, his eyes carried the same kind of quiet pity you see on a nurse's face when the diagnosis is already written. Caleb, she said, breathless. I just need to talk to him. He didn't move aside. He's not here. Please, she pushed. I just want to explain. He doesn't understand. It's gotten out of hand. Everyone's talking. I can fix this if he just gives me a chance. Caleb looked at her like she'd just told a ghost story. He left town last night. What? She blinked, as if she'd misheard. He packed a few things and said he needed air. And peace. The word peace lingered like a closing door. She let out a short, bitter laugh. Peace? He burns down my life and then goes looking for peace. Caleb didn't answer. He stepped aside just enough to grab something from the small entry table. A sealed envelope with her name written across it in that same neat, deliberate handwriting she used to tease him for. The ink was slightly smudged, like he'd pressed too hard with the pen. "He asked me to give you this," Caleb said, holding it out. Her fingers hesitated before taking it. The paper felt heavier than it should. She tore it open too fast, the flap ripping jaggedly. Inside, one page. No greeting, no emotion, just words printed with calm precision. "By the time you read this, I'll be where you can't follow. I won't fight you. I just won't be here anymore." She reread it twice, then again. The simplicity of it felt crueler than anything he could have yelled. Her knees buckled before she could catch herself, and she sank onto the step, the envelope crumpling in her hand. Caleb crouched beside her, unsure whether to comfort her or stay silent. "He just left," she said faintly. "Just like that." "He said he'd already said everything that needed saying," Caleb murmured, "and that this was his quiet version of self-defense." Her lip trembled. "He's not allowed to disappear. He doesn't get to vanish and make me the villain." Caleb's voice softened. "You made yourself the villain, Sienna. He just decided not to keep playing your story." She stared out toward the lake, where the reflection of the moon rippled faintly across the dark water. For the first time, she felt the emptiness, the kind that doesn't come from loss, but from the sudden absence of being seen. Because the truth was, he hadn't left to hurt her. He'd left to remove her from the equation entirely. No confrontation, no closure, just subtraction. Her mascara had streaked down her cheeks, but she didn't bother wiping it away. "Where did he go?" she whispered. Caleb shook his head. "Didn't say. Just told me you'd come here eventually and that you'd need to hear it straight." She laughed weakly, a hollow, broken sound. "You think he's sitting somewhere laughing at this?" "No," Caleb said. "He's done laughing." The words hit harder than she expected. She folded the letter back into the envelope, smoothing the edges like it mattered. But it didn't. The paper could have been blank for all the difference it made. The message was the same. She hadn't lost him in a fight. She'd lost the right to find him. She hadn't even changed out of the clothes from the drive before opening her laptop and logging in. The glow of the screen felt like a lifeline, a stage, a place where she could finally reclaim the narrative. Because that's what this had become, a PR problem, a perception issue. Her husband was a ghost, but the world was watching, and if she didn't get ahead of it now, he'd control the story too. She couldn't let that happen. She cracked her knuckles, opened Facebook, and began typing. "A good man doesn't disappear like this. A good man doesn't punish his wife for needing space. I left for a weekend to breathe, and came back to find my life turned off like a switch. Locked doors, frozen accounts, silence. It's cruel. And it's not love." She hit post, and for a few minutes, the validation trickled in. Some shocked reactions, a few angry face emojis, one WTF comment from a girl she barely remembered from college. That was something. That meant people cared. But then something strange happened. The likes slowed, then stopped, and the comments changed. First, it was Amanda from HR, someone she used to gossip with over lunchtime salads. She'd liked the post, but a minute later, she unliked it, then liked his post instead. She clicked over to his page out of habit or maybe instinct. There it was, a single quiet post. No hashtags, no anger, just a clean white background and black text. "I gave everything I could. When that wasn't enough, I let go." Posted 2 minutes before hers. Hundreds of reactions. Comments piling up by the second. "You deserved peace. Took courage to walk away, man. Saw the signs years ago. Glad you're finally free." She scrolled faster. From Michelle, her old yoga buddy. "You always put her first. We all saw it." From Darren, the neighbor who always helped them with snow shoveling. "You were never dramatic, just quiet and strong." Even from Angela, their accountant. "Proud of you for protecting yourself. We've seen enough women play the victim after bleeding a man dry." Her chest tightened. She jumped back to her own post. The first new comment was from her sister. "You mocked him. What did you think would happen?" She stared at it, blinking. That couldn't be real. Her sister, who used to whisper behind closed doors about how uptight he was, who laughed at his budgeting spreadsheets, who once joked about how Sienna's always got him wrapped, was now on his side? She clicked into Messenger and started typing furiously. Why the hell would you post that? Her sister left her on read. Then came the unfollows. Silent little exits. Tiny notifications she wouldn't have noticed 6 months ago. But now they screamed in her face. Her high school best friend? Gone. The coworker she'd once covered for during a conference? Unfriended. 2 of Aaron's friends, the ones who used to flirt with her when he wasn't looking, both liked his post. She tried Instagram next. Same story. She had posted a bikini picture the first night of the trip. Healing mode activated palm tree sparkles, with some fake inspirational quote. Underneath, someone commented now, "Didn't age well, huh?" She deleted it, tried to go live, changed her mind, posted a story instead. A black screen with white text. People only support the side they think they understand. No one responded, but 5 more unfollows rolled in. It wasn't just about losing money anymore, or access, or a home. It was about losing image. Losing the soft cocoon of public sympathy she thought was her safety net. She clicked back to his post again, now at 1.2K likes. One comment, pinned by him, sat at the top. She left loud. So I chose to leave quiet. Her hand trembled on the mouse. She opened the comment box on his post. Started typing, "This isn't fair. You ambushed me. You made me look like the villain." Then deleted it. There was nothing she could say now that wouldn't sound like what it was. Too late. Not only had she lost control of the story, she'd handed it to him. On a silver platter. The envelope didn't look important. No bold stamps. No court seal. Just a pale beige rectangle with her name typed neatly in the center. No return address. The kind of envelope you mistake for a brochure or political flyer until you feel the weight. It wasn't heavy, but it had substance. Enough to make her hands pause before tearing it open. She was staying in a furnished rental by then. 2 rooms, hard bed, fridge that hummed loud enough to drown out her thoughts if she stood close. She hadn't figured out what came next. Lawyers had gone quiet, her family didn't pick up, and the friends she'd banked on? Scattered. The group chat was still technically open, but no one responded to her last 3 messages. They'd liked his page instead. She opened the envelope on autopilot. Inside, a single-page letter from a law firm she'd never heard of, and stapled to it a deed transfer. Her old house, the one with the white porch swing, the jasmine vine she planted herself, the bay window she cried beside the night her father died, was now legally owned by an organization she'd never interacted with. American Veterans Housing Initiative. She read it twice, 3 times. No mention of sale price. No note about her rights. No clause to contest. Just the sentence. The transfer has been completed, and the property is no longer under the control of either party. The second page was shorter, typed, and signed. No letterhead. You said you'd call the cops if I stopped you. So I didn't. I just left the door open and turned the lights off behind you. She read it again, and this time the full gravity of it settled on her chest like concrete. He hadn't sold it to a friend. He hadn't kept it for himself. He gave it away. To strangers who'd never seen the wedding photos that used to hang by the stairs, who wouldn't know about the loose tile by the back door or the notch in the pantry shelf where they marked anniversaries with Sharpie. She stood up so fast the chair screeched. Pacing didn't help. Nothing helped. She stormed into the kitchenette, pulled open the cheap cabinets, slammed them shut again, opened the fridge, slammed that too. Nothing to punch. No one to scream at. And somehow that made it worse. Because revenge you can argue with. Revenge gives you something to push against. But this was quiet. This was air being removed from the room. She called the number listed at the bottom of the law firm's letter. It rang twice, then voicemail. She didn't leave a message. What would she even say? I thought I had time. I thought you'd chase. I thought you'd break. She sat at the tiny table in the kitchen. The overhead light flickered once, then steadied. She noticed the clock on the microwave had stopped blinking days ago. She hadn't reset it. Outside, the world moved on. Cars passed. Somewhere a dog barked. Life went forward. But in that moment, in that room, everything stood still. She realized then that he hadn't vanished in a rage. He hadn't vanished at all. He'd simply erased the space she used to occupy. He didn't take her to court. He didn't post screenshots or air out her affairs. He just let her walk into a version of herself that no longer mattered. And the final silence, the one in her chest, was louder than any fight they ever had.